I'm out for my morning walk and I wanted to talk a little bit today about why I don't have a primary care doctor. This is not meant to tell you not to get one, but I'm in pretty good health, as good as anybody that I'm around, and I don't have a primary care doctor. What I do is I check my blood work every 3 months. I wouldn't necessarily advise you to do that. None of this is advice, but I check my blood work every 3 months to make sure that everything's in check. So I'm going to talk a little bit today about that and how you can do the same thing. I use Private MD Labs. You could use something else, but I'll talk a little bit about what I do. So a few years back, I was finishing up my PhD. I was in grad school, so I was super busy and I couldn't go to the gym all the time anymore. And I really was at a place where I was overweight. I had gotten to nearly 200 pounds. I'm 5'9", so I should not be 200 pounds really ever. But I had eaten poorly, wasn't exercising in the way I should have been, and I got to 200 pounds. So I decided I'm going to do something drastic this time. I'm going to try the carnivore diet. I'm going to just eat meat and see how that does. And I dropped 20 pounds in just a matter of weeks. And I wasn't doing anything differently except doing that. I didn't go to the gym. I actually went for walks like this one. And what I would do is, I was finishing up my PhD, so I had a lot of research to do. I had a lot of writing to do. So I'd get up in the morning. I would start with Bible study and prayer and start my day that way, and then get to work. So I'd start working on my research, and I'd be doing a lot of writing. Now, when I did that, I began to see that if I had really 3 to 4 blocks of time during the day, that was something that worked for me. And any more than that, and I was basically fried. I couldn't do much more than that, but I could work for 3 or 4 concentrated blocks of time. So I'd have that first block of time right after Bible study and prayer in the morning, and then I'd stop for lunch. I'd eat lunch, and then I'd go out for a walk for an hour. Usually somewhere like this. There's another park around here also. So I'd go for a walk. After that meal, everything kind of gets digested and everything, maybe 45 minutes to an hour, and I'd come back home and I'd work some more. Long concentrated block of time where I could focus. Then I'd stop for dinner and I'd go out for another walk and come back home, get a final block of time where I could work. So usually it would be 3 of those. If there was a 4th, then it would just be where I would break up one of those larger chunks of time, maybe between lunch and dinner, into 2 parts. So I would do that, and I figured I'm feeling really good while I'm doing that. And so I decided, let me check some blood work and let's see how I'm doing. So I felt pretty good about myself. I'm doing carnivore. This weight is coming off easily. I'm not going out to the gym. I'm not running. I'm just eating. At that time, I was eating burgers. That was the easiest thing for me to do. So I would get burger patties, and I would just broil burger patties in the oven. And I would eat 3 or 4 burger patties. That would be my lunch or my dinner. And then I go for my walk, and that would be it. It was very simple, but the weight just came off, and I wasn't feeling hungry. Well, I got the blood work, and when I looked and got the blood work, it turns out that my A1C was, I believe it was 5.7 or 5.8. Whatever the number is that makes you pre-diabetic, that's what I was. And so I'm thinking to myself, if I haven't eaten sugar in weeks and I've gotten into better health, then what does that mean I was before I got this blood work? And so I continued doing carnivore, eventually got all my numbers back in shape. And so I want to talk a little bit about the fact that helped turn it around. Right now, I wouldn't say I'm a carnivore in this sense that often people say. Let me switch arms here. I'm not a carnivore in the sense that people often think about it. where they would say, I haven't eaten meat in 1,300 days or something like that. I'm not that person. I can tell you right now. But I eat, the majority of my meals are carnivore meals, but I don't only do carnivore strictly. And many of those people have come out of really bad health conditions. So that's not me. But these birds are really loud. I think these are birds. I don't know what that is, but that's really loud. Hopefully you can hear me though. So back to just the idea of what you would do, what kind of things you can check. There are really 5 numbers that I check on a quarterly basis, every 3 months. So one is HDL cholesterol. Sometimes people call that the good cholesterol, but I don't know that there's such thing as bad cholesterol, so I don't get into that. One of the things you'll notice is I'm not going to mention LDL cholesterol except to say that I don't really pay attention to it. But I will say that doing this with private MD labs, one of the things they do, and I appreciate it, they're concerned because my LDL cholesterol is high. They're concerned that because that's what a lot of the medical literature tells you, hey, you got to get your LDL cholesterol down. I feel really good. Cholesterol is something that my body needs, that we all need. But HDL is what I pay attention to, what's called the good cholesterol. You want that number to be higher, and then triglycerides, you want that number to be lower. And so I'm checking HDL cholesterol, triglycerides. I'm also checking A1C, which is basically a measure, it's one of those glucose or blood sugar measures. You want that number to be, I like that number to be 5.6 or less, because now I know that that's not in the pre-diabetic range anymore. And then the other 2 numbers that I look at are blood glucose, fasting blood glucose. So I will go a day without eating before I get this blood work. And then they check my glucose, and they also check my insulin. So those are the 5 numbers I usually check. I also check some liver enzyme numbers as well, because my liver enzymes were elevated at one point. But basically, I'm checking HDL cholesterol, triglycerides, hemoglobin A1C, fasting glucose, and fasting insulin. A lot of times your doctor won't tell you to check fasting insulin, but I like to check fasting insulin because I can use that number with the glucose number, and I can get a HOMA-IR score, which is an insulin resistance number. If that number is under 1, you feel pretty good about being insulin sensitive, meaning that your insulin isn't constantly elevated. So the way you get that number, by the way, the formula is you multiply your fasting glucose by your fasting insulin and divide that number by 405. So fasting glucose times fasting insulin divided by 405, that gives you a HOMA-IR score. So for me, that number was under 1 back in June when I last did my blood work. My HDL, then I take a ratio of my HDL, actually triglycerides to HDL ratio is what I like, because that number also should be under 1. Your HDL needs to be higher than your triglycerides. And that's generally what we're going to do. Let's switch to some backward walking real quick and switch arms too. Sun's in my face. All right, so I take my triglycerides, divide them by my HDL. That should give me a number under 1. If so, we've been eating pretty well over the last quarter. If my HOMA-IR score is under 1, then we're in pretty good shape. And if my hemoglobin A1C is under 5.6, this time it was 5.4 back in June, then you're feeling pretty good. And so I check those numbers. And if those numbers are in pretty good shape, then as far as going to a doctor, who in some cases is not going to tell me about my insulin, for instance, it's not to say that the doctor doesn't know what they're talking about, but when we think about doctors here, I like to think more in terms of, hey, if I have a surgery that needs to happen, this is when I want to go to the doctor. But in terms of my day-to-day life and somebody just checking me every 6 months or a year, I really want to take responsibility for that, because that's the thing I'll end with here. A lot of times when it comes to having a primary care doctor, what happens is people don't take their health and wellness into their own hands. They don't do things. One of the things we talk about on this channel is how we can do some of these things, do all of these things biblically. from a perspective of, I want to take care of the body that God has given me. And so sometimes people aren't thinking of it that way. And when they're not thinking of it that way, and they're just saying, hey, whatever the doctor tells me to do, then sometimes the doctor can tell you to do things that are basically things that are connected to the pharmaceutical industry. I used to deliver pizza when I was in grad school, and sometimes I would deliver pizza to doctor's offices. And most of the time when I was delivering to doctor's offices, it was pharmaceutical reps that would be ordering pizza for the doctors and nurses there. And they would have these presentations. You could tell because they were like setting up the presentations and stuff. So I'm bringing this pizza and all this food that honestly, you would think, well, shouldn't doctors be eating healthier than this? I mean, they'll have salads, but the doctors weren't wanting the salads. They wanted the pizza. And so I was working at Donato's Pizza, delivering pizza during grad school. So basically, they're eating a lot of food that they would probably tell many of their patients, you shouldn't be eating this all the time. Now, one of the things for me is I don't care about eating pizza sometimes or eating cookies or anything like that. But those should be treats. Those shouldn't be happening all the time. So I say all that to say that a lot of times these doctors are being sold, hey, use this drug or use that drug by these pharmaceutical reps who are giving them a pizza party and stuff like that. I've seen it. And so I look at that and say, if that's the case, and things that are more natural, people often aren't doing, and they're trusting their doctors. And in many cases, their doctors are in these situations where they have no way of researching all of these things. They don't have time. They're trying to help you. So many of us need to take our health and wellness into our own hands. You know, 150, 200 years ago, you didn't have somebody that was telling you how you needed to eat and do these various things. People took care of that themselves. So if that's something you're interested in, we've got a link below from Private MD Labs. It helps out the channel. If that's something you're interested in and you want to try out getting your own blood work, I'm not here to tell you to don't have a doctor anymore. But if you already don't have a doctor and people are kind of scaring you and saying, well, you better have a doctor, well, you can get your own blood work. You can take your health and wellness into your own hands and not think of it as, if you don't have a doctor, then you don't care about your health, because that's just not true. Okay, so we'll talk more in later videos about my framework for staying healthy and what I'm going to be doing. I'm in a process where I'm about to get very lean. I have a goal that I'm going to dunk a basketball before I turn 42 years old. I'm about to turn 41 in a few weeks, and I keep saying that it's my goal to dunk a basketball, and I've never done it before. I'm 5 foot 8 inches, 5'9", with shoes on, which, by the way, these are my shoes that I'm wearing. I got these, I don't know if you can see that, but I got these toe sneakers. Probably talk some about those too, but I'm gonna dunk a basketball before I turn 42, and I haven't put this out publicly until now, but the way I'm gonna do it is I'm gonna lean out, and then I'm going to get stronger in the gym as well. And then the finishing touches will be the plyometrics and all of the jumping stuff. And I'm going to largely do that from a biblical perspective, right? I'm going to not simply be like, let me take a bunch of supplements and stuff like that, but a combination of fasting, eating well, and walking. I'll talk more about that framework in another video, but a combination of those things will be the foundation of all of this. And so at 42, before 42, I'll be dunking. So that's it for today's video. We're going to do these videos on Mondays where I talk more about kind of the internals, I didn't talk about my weight or anything. I hadn't weighed in and measured, but my body fat percentage is probably like 18, 19, 20% right now. We need to get that down to probably 12. And so we'll be doing updates of that on Mondays. And then on Wednesdays and Fridays, we'll be doing more related to what does it look like to be healthy and well, and how we can do that naturally, but more importantly, biblically. God made our bodies to be healthy, and so we want to make sure we do that. Hopefully the sun's not in your eyes there. So that's it for today's video.